Howdy folks, and welcome back to another post-series review. Like always, this is not meant to be any sort of critical or analytical look into the game, it's simply a casual chat about my experiences. Just like the Monster Hunter Stories post-series review, I'm going to start this one out with personal stories and a behind-the-scenes look on what it took to finally release this series. And then I'll talk about the actual game itself, so feel free to skip forward if you're just interested in the game. Alright, let's get started. I've said this numerous times across numerous videos, and I'll go ahead and say it one more time. I credit Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake as the game that made me a better streamer. Let me start from the beginning, and this might be a long one. This post-series review is almost like a part 2, so if you want the full story, go check out my Monster Hunter Stories post-series review, but I'll go ahead and give a quick relevant recap. If you watched my Monster Hunter post-series review, you'll recall that I said when I streamed that game, MostlyPositive was a video essay channel. Since starting video essays, I began to watch videos through the eyes of a creator looking to learn, analyzing how certain edits and transitions from topics are made. The issue was that I didn't do this for live content because that simply wasn't the focus of the channel. Therefore, I wasn't learning or absorbing best practices on how to be a live entertainer, and that's why majority of the Monster Hunter Stories streams were just straight up terrible. Alright, that was the recap, and 4 of the 6 Monster Hunter Stories streams took place in June of 2024. After the channel's first anniversary on May 22nd, I was kind of locked in on making video essays. I grew so much as an editor in the first year, and I wanted to keep putting out videos I was proud of. Over the summer, as soon as one project was over, the next began, and each kept growing in scope. My Monster Hunter 1 video essay blew up, and this was the first time experiencing such a thing. It was a high I've never felt before. The following video essay was a short and sweet one that I knew wasn't gonna get any views in comparison due to it being an indie game, but the views I did get almost didn't make any sense to me considering the absolute flood of people that had just subbed. In September, I released a Black Ops 1 video essay that I had just as much pride in as the Monster Hunter one, and that fell completely flat. Even on the re-upload, because I had something to fix from the original, but in the end, the re-upload had its own problems and yada yada yada. The point being, I was confused, and this was where I started to feel just exhausted from these video essays. The views that were coming in just didn't correlate to the time and effort I was putting in. I began to feel immense stress because I wanted to put out the next vid as soon as I could. One more video essay, this time on the PSVR 2. Once again, something I'm extremely proud of, and it's done fairly well overall and gave me the push I needed to become a YouTube partner. But at release, I still wasn't happy with the low views. Over and over again, same story, different video. I kept getting subscribers, but no one was actually returning. This is when you learn the hard way that no one uses their subscription tab. Even as a regular YouTube viewer myself, that was an infuriating piece of information to learn. During this time, the idea that I wanted to drop video essays altogether kept growing. I just wasn't enjoying it anymore. It became extremely stressful. I wanted to play games, have fun, share my experiences and laughter, and connect with people. I wanted to be a streamer. I always have. I was having a growing realization that I don't even watch or enjoy video essays, so why would I even bother making them? Or rather, continue making them. Their original purpose was to distract me during one of the most difficult years of my life. And by the time the first anniversary rolled around, the pain I was feeling wasn't, well, let's just say nearly as intense. So anyways, in the same way I looked at essay and script-based content, I began to look at live-based content with the intention of learning. I love Let's Plays. Streaming is literally just a Let's Play, except it's live. What makes an entertaining stream? What separates a good streamer from a bad streamer? I spent and continue to spend so much time analyzing videos and streams from a large spectrum of creators. Those who only get single-digit views to thousands to millions, it was all in search of knowledge. Let me take the best and most admirable aspects of everything I've seen and implement it into my own streams. Dragon Quest III Remake was coming up, and I knew this was a game I would love to stream all the way through. That was the goal, and I'm proud to say that I accomplished that goal to a degree that I'm happy with. I think the start was pretty rough. I was still mumbling through lines and not saying saying much during battles, and commentating through just walking across the world map is pretty tough in general. But I feel like I got better over time. Like I said in the Monster Hunter Stories post-series review, JRPGs are fantastic games to stream. Even if you're not a particularly entertaining person, the game kind of has you covered since the genre is filled to the absolute brim with dialogue to read. Dragon Quest in particular even has accents in its dialogue, so you can do fun voices, or just have your brain completely shattered trying to understand and speak out the nonsense you're seeing. At a certain point, I had a self-realization that the number one thing that can turn a boring stream to something even remotely entertaining is the ability to simply think out loud. Unless you're a huge dum-dum or brain dead, every single person has an internal monologue. It's your thinking voice. When you're playing a game, you're always thinking about what your next objective is, how to solve a puzzle, how to prepare for the journey, your thoughts on the story so far, and so on and so forth. The best way I realized to implement this is in battles. You're constantly analyzing the situation in any battle and deciding what to do next on the fly. Speak it. Say what you're thinking out loud. Oh, alright. My entire party is low on health. This next attack could wipe us if I don't play my cards right. I'll go ahead and use Dodgy Dance to up my evasion since the hero absolutely needs to stay alive. Okay, since my priest has the least amount of health, I'll go ahead and use my Monster Wrangler to use Emergency Groom. She also has really high speed, so I'm pretty confident she'll go first. If the boss attacks after, then the priest should be able to survive. The boss is using breath attacks, so I'll have my mage cast Insuladal to help mitigate damage. And then the priest will use multi-heal, and we should be pretty safe. If I can, I'll use Acceleratal next turn to increase everyone's agility. Just like that, suddenly you're not just silently thinking and playing a menu selection simulator. It's significantly more engaging for the viewer and a lot easier for them to follow what's actually going on. I can't begin to express just how much I love video games. I love every aspect of them. The story, the visuals, the gameplay, the music. These are all things that I'm always thinking about, and it's really just a matter of learning to think out loud. It's a game changer, and I'm genuinely happy with how these streams turned out. I continued my playthrough of Monster Hunter Stories right after Dragon Quest, and the remainder of the playthrough had significantly better commentary compared to the previous 4 streams. So why has it taken so long to release these videos? Because of video essays. Because I was still doing them, and it wasn't until the final video of 2024 that I tried something different, a sort of Twitch compilation video of my first playthrough of the original Monster Hunter. I had so much fun with that video that I tried it again. It was significantly easier than video essays, and it's significantly closer to something that I would actually watch. For the first time, I could actually put out more than a single video a month, and that made me extremely happy, despite the fact that I knew these videos would get absolutely no views. But it didn't bother me as much because they were easier to make, and I was having fun again. I got to a point where I could put out one compilation video almost every week, and it's been great, but now I've almost circled back around to spending way too much time editing and hardly any time actually enjoying games, and it's killing me. On top of the fact that I had absolutely no clue how to edit both the Monster Hunter Stories and Dragon Quest III playthroughs. I've tried before and it wasn't coming together. To me, these playthroughs tell one complete story. They tell my story. I can't release the Dragon Quest playthrough without the Stories playthrough being released first. This past summer has been a journey of trying to figure out how I want to move forward as a content creator. I talk about it extensively at the end of the Kirby's Dream Land and Super Mario Land series, trying to ease up on the harsh standards I put on myself so that I can be happier, so that I can spend more time playing and streaming games, to put myself in a position where I have a better opportunity to build a community. All of that is impossible if all I'm ever doing is editing. I've experimented with lighter editing with the Bloody Hell series, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. I took that experience and applied it to the Monster Hunter Story series, as much as I could at least. That needed tight editing due to how much of an overall disaster those streams were. But with the Dragon Quest streams, those were significantly better and gave me an opportunity to be even lighter on the editing. I was always scared of downtime and commentary. I felt that if I wasn't constantly talking, it wasn't entertaining. Even though I don't apply this thought process to anyone I ever watch, I'm literally my own harshest critic. After asking opinions online about how others felt about downtime and commentary, it helped me realize that it's okay. I mean, I've always known it was okay because, again, it doesn't bother me when I watch other people. But finding out how other people who watch streams and Let's Plays feel about the matter helped me come to terms with something I was always needlessly self-conscious about. Now, I did screw up a tiny bit, twice, and then one obnoxiously huge screw up. There were 2 cutscenes that I accidentally played off screen and had no way to get back to. Then the huge screw up was back when my OBS recording settings weren't totally optimized for my rig. One of the recordings was completely unusable. Thank God that was the start of the post game though. Back then I decided to cut my losses and just continue playing on my own. I mean, I had no way to revert my progress, so not much I could do there. Now that I've begun editing the series, I figured I'd play through the entire game again to get those missed cutscenes and to have a legit recording session of the post-game. Time consuming? Yes. Big deal? Nah, not really. I played on the easiest difficulty to blast through everything, and this time around I had my handy-dandy checklist document for gathering monsters and mini-medals as I was progressing. So it was pretty smooth sailing and an overall chill experience. The new post-game recording almost felt cathartic the whole way through, with the final moments of the recording feeling like it was kind of unreal. How about we call it there? If you listen to all of that, then honestly, thank you so much, and I hope it helps you in some way. There's a whole lot I want to talk about, so let's get right into it. I love Dragon Quest. I've been a fan since the release of Dragon Quest IX back in 2009, so over half my life now. Since then, I've beaten Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 11, and Builders. That's right, I've never beaten 9, but I've gotten to the final boss, second phase, so cut me some slack and don't ask me why I never went back to beat it. Anyways, Dragon Quest 3, what a legendary game in a legendary franchise with a legendary history. I normally don't do spoiler warnings since the whole point of a post-series review is to talk about a game after it's been featured on the channel, but in this case, it's warranted since spoilers will go beyond Dragon Quest 3. If you know, you know. If you don't, well, it'd almost be a spoiler to give any sort of hint, so I'll leave it at that. The first time I played Dragon Quest 3 was back in late 2019 when the trilogy released on Switch. I, of course, played it in release order, so 1, 2, then 3, but I already knew 3 was a prequel. I just didn't know how it all tied together, other than the fact that all the heroes in the first 2 games are descendants of Erdrick, something that's constantly said throughout those games. And for simplicity's sake, I'll continue to refer to the hero of Dragon Quest 3 as Erdrick. Despite the Switch version of the trilogy just being ports of the disgusting looking mobile versions, I still had a fantastic time. I followed up my playthrough of 3 with a playthrough of 11S, and oh my god, that final scene was beyond incredible. It's funny because right at the start of the 3 remake playthrough, I immediately thought, does she have the same actress as she did in 11? After Erdrick's mother says her "Cooey" wake-up line, it instantly triggered my memory of how the line was said in 11's ending, and I thought surely it's the same actress. I couldn't find anything online that confirms it, but the actress Jessica Carroll does have credits for playing Amber, the Luminary's mother in 11, and it's confirmed she plays Erdrick's mother in the final scene as well. While 3 Remake's credits don't say who played what role, Carroll's name does appear in the credits, and it's safe to say she reprised her role as Erdrick's mother, something that I find so extremely heartwarming. Anyways, that's just a quick recap on my history with the series and 3 specifically. For now, let's talk art style. I love Octopath Traveler, I love Dragon Quest 3, I love pixel art, and with all my heart, I love the HD-2D art style. HD-2D is genuinely everything I ever wanted growing up. I thought, man, it would be so cool to get a retro pixel art game with voice acting, modern lighting, and music that isn't chiptune. The idea was that despite the contrast of retro and modern, that it would actually blend perfectly. And yeah, that's pretty much how it turned out. That's exactly what I got with Octopath, and I never expected Dragon Quest to get the same treatment one day. Sadly, this is where Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake falls flat. The remake goes for less 2D and more HD. What I mean by this is that characters and enemies have extremely detailed sprites to the point where it almost looks drawn at certain points. Then there's the fact that pretty much everything else in the game is 3D. While I suppose this is still HD-2D, it's taken in a direction that I really didn't want. In my opinion, Octopath started and perfected this style in one fell swoop. The appeal of HD-2D is to bring as much of that SNES era soul to the modern age. Octopath sprites are bold and detailed in their sprite work. Major portions of towns and the world itself is in 3D, but they're all textured with astounding 16-bit sprite work that complement the character sprites themselves. Octopath has the perfect blend of 2D and 3D, and it's all enhanced with phenomenal lighting and gorgeous effects. Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake is a gorgeous game, and it's the best Dragon Quest III has ever looked, but when you directly compare it to Octopath, a true HD-2D game, it's incredibly disappointing to know what could have and should have been. Honestly, I hate saying this because it makes me sound overly negative to how I actually feel towards the look the remake chose to go. Again, it is a gorgeous game. Aliahan, Romeria, the Fairy Village, Portoga, Mur, Jipang, Merchantburg, Alifgard, Tantagel, even a place like Thedin, which is the destroyed village with the ghosts. And it's places like Thedin that then makes me question if that level of detail with all the destruction and rubble meticulously placed throughout the village, the moss and overgrowth on walls and trees would truly be possible and properly represented in a true HD 2D game like Octopath. And that's just me describing Thedin. Every place I mentioned before really is a sight to behold. So, you know what? I think I'm gonna have to walk back what I said about being extremely disappointed. I'm straight up middle of the road of how I would have liked this game, but the more I think about it and the more I look back on the entirety of the game, ultimately I think they made the right choice, and my fondness for it will grow with time. Real quick, let's cover the music, and I say real quick because there's not a whole lot to say here. I don't mean that in a bad way. This game's music is performed by the Tokyo Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra. The significance of that is that they've done a symphonic suite for the game before, and the music in this game is just a modern recording of it. If you've listened to the symphonic suite previously, then you know just how great it is, and that's pretty much what's in this version of the game, except this time it's expanded to every piece of music rather than just the main tracks, meaning we get fantastic night tracks as well. Overall, gorgeous music with great voice acting that complement each other and makes the voiced scenes hit a little harder. As mentioned before, my experience with Dragon Quest III was just the mobile version that was released on Switch. While writing the script for this video, I've come to learn that it is significantly worse than I realized. Now, there are a million differences across the million different versions of this game, so I apologize if I get some things wrong. I do try to get my facts straight before writing things down. Also, I tend to use the terms NES and Famicom, as well as SNES and Super Famicom, kind of interchangeably, but there are moments where I'm very intentional with my wording, so apologies in advance and please bear with me. Alright, let's get into this. What particularly bothered me was finding out that the mobile version cut out so much of Ortega's journey, something that even the Game Boy Color version managed to retain. The NES version has a small title cutscene that shows Ortega's battle at the volcano. Awesome. The Super Famicom version runs you through Ortega's journey before the game actually begins. Finding that out blew my mind because I don't remember there being any cutscenes showing Ortega's journey in the mobile version. Also, a big marketing point of the HD-2D remake was being able to see Ortega memories and expanding on what happened throughout his journey. I thought that was a brand new thing to the remake, but finding out that that's how the Super Famicom version started was super cool. As far as I can tell, there are multiple new scenes that weren't in the Super Famicom Famicom version. Overall, the remake spreads just about all those memories, both new and old, across the entire game, giving a better overall pacing. Running into people who spoke about Ortega was exciting and absolutely heart-wrenching. This was infinitely amplified when an actual memory started. The only time I felt any sort of, well, really anything from the Switch version in regards to Ortega was when you finally catch up to him, which wasn't terrible in that version. I'll at least give it that much. This new version though, oh my god. I loved all the acting in this game, but Ortega was the shining star. The actor's performance, Ortega's hardships, and the music that played alongside it, it genuinely got me emotional multiple times. But his final scene fucking killed me. I'm someone who really loves video games. I love experiencing stories, music, gameplay, and anything else it offers. This also means when a franchise like Dragon Quest comes along with decades worth of titles, you might move on to the next one in a pretty fast pace. Sometimes only the hardest hitting events stick with you and not the whole journey. I think it's fair to say the HD-2D remake on the standard difficulty is probably the easiest version, but this is also a JRPG, so in reality, you can make it as difficult or as easy as you want. I'm simply speaking from the perspective of a standard playthrough. Being able to log conversations into memory can be extremely handy. Being able to zoom from inside buildings, while annoying, cause I really love that you would slam your head on the ceiling previously, is once again another handy feature. Maps being completely filled and present as soon as you enter a new area is something I 100% completely understand why anyone would hate. I personally love it because of how I play my video games. I always take the wrong path first. Always. Because more often than not, that's where the chest, collectibles, and secrets are. In the end, I always scour every single inch of whatever dungeon or building or whatever it is I may be exploring. Having that complete map from the start simply saves me time and doesn't diminish my experience in any way. Again, I get why people would hate it. I personally don't. I also understand why people would hate map markers, but I totally love that addition as well. The original Dragon Quest trilogy were NES titles. In those days, games were extremely obtuse on where to go and what to do. Sometimes to the point where the devs expected you to use the instruction manual that came with the game. Sometimes the markers could definitely guide you too much, but there were multiple instances where it didn't tell you jack squat, like when getting the Sword of Kings. In any case, I've beaten the game before and already had a vague memory of where everything was and what to do, so maybe that's why it didn't bother me so much. In general, all of these quality of life features simply make the game easier to go back to, which I did have to do for this series. You can also just turn them off. Turn off hints, turn off markers, easy peasy. Again, this game can be as easy or as difficult as you want, and it's that freedom of choice that makes this version so great. To continue this gameplay talk, let's touch on the personality system. I hate it. It's so bad for a few reasons. The first reason being that you're forced to go through that awful quiz and scenario in order to get your personality. The second being that it hardly makes a difference in the grand scheme of things. Personalities affect your stat growth, but don't make so much of a difference that you would want to constantly switch personalities to maximize your build, especially when you end up losing half your stats every time you switch vocations. You'll probably want to grab skills from every class, but in the end you'll be funneled down to one specific class, with that being Sage. Sage is just insanely powerful considering you get all priest and mage skills with enormous amounts of MP. But before grabbing Sage, there's one class you'll definitely want to maximize its potential first. Monster Motherfucking Wrangler. A brand new class added to this version, and what an absolute beast it is. Monster Wrangler's strength is determined by another new feature to the game, which is being able to find friendly monsters out in the world. The more monsters you find, the more abilities you get, and those abilities get stronger depending on how many monsters you found. The ability Monster Pylon, used with Wildside after having found a large number of monsters, will absolutely decimate anything in your path. It's the single most satisfying combo in the game. Let's say you found every monster. If I changed a party member's vocation to Monster Wrangler for the first time, they immediately get all skills. From there, work towards Sage and build up a massive pool of MP, and literally nothing can stop you. And to circle back around ultimately means that your personality plays such a small role in this game that I question why they even bothered with it in the first place. Maybe it has a more prominent effect in older versions, but even in the mobile version, it didn't feel all that important. Plus, with this being a JRPG, again, you can just grind your way to victory. To recap on gameplay, personalities dumb, quality of life changes very welcomed, Monster Wrangler and friendly monsters excellent. I didn't mention the monster arena because I really don't care about it. Not in a negative way, it's still fun, but I just don't feel any sort of way about it. Alright, moving on to something I really don't care to talk about because it's bound to get people to screech like a banshee. I gotta do it though, because if I don't say anything, I almost feel like I'm encouraging these awful practices. Censorship. I am completely against it, and before I go any further, I want to say one more thing. There are people out there who will try to make you feel like your opinions are invalid. They'll say things like, "How does this affect you? It's not a big deal," or start attacking you as a person by calling you an incel and whatnot. These people are the problem, and I find them equally disgusting as censorship as a whole. Even when you try to respect their opinion, they won't respect yours. Don't let people like this make you feel bad for wanting to keep the integrity of freedom of expression. With that being said, let's keep going. There is no scenario where I believe censorship is necessary. I also feel there's a fine line that localizers walk when it comes to this. And unfortunately nowadays, they tend to choose censorship or outright completely change things to push their agendas instead of being true to the source material. While majority of the time I want a completely accurate translation, I do want to acknowledge that there are instances where changes during localization can greatly improve the experience, even if it's not exactly one-to-one with the source material, and Dragon Quest is the greatest example of that with how accents are given to characters all throughout the world in every game. Contrary to popular belief, I've found reports that state this does exist in the Japanese version, but in an extremely limited way where the only accents found are those native to Japan. For example, the Japanese have a native version of a southern accent, but a native British, Indian, Russian, or Middle Eastern accent doesn't exist. Now let's start with censorship specifically. The first being female characters being given unnecessary changes to their designs. The female warrior was given skin-colored shorts and top. Oh, thank God, she has tight, skin-colored clothing that conforms to her every curve. I was about to raise hell for a second, but I'm okay now. Is her original design a little risque? In the official art, yeah, kind of, I guess. In the sprite, no, not at all. The way I see it, if it was really a problem, then tight skin-colored clothing would never be an acceptable solution. I find it amazing that the West will complain about a drawing of a female warrior showing skin and cleavage while simultaneously promoting sex in every piece of media possible, or outright defending pedophilia with men walking around naked in pride parades with children around, or straight up burlesque drag shows made for kids. Yes, this exists, and the hypocrisy is immeasurable. So I ask, who is this censorship for? Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest, and Kazuhiko Torishima, a man who is considered one of the most important figures in manga and was also once Akira Toriyama's editor, both seem to vehemently disagree with the censorship made to this remake. It's clear this censorship was forced by Square themselves, either to meet guidelines to reach a certain age rating for the game, or possibly get ahead of potential backlash from the West for their designs. Possibly both. In any case, artistic integrity is being destroyed for an audience that likely doesn't exist, or an audience that will still be able to get the game even if they're below the age rating. You know how fucking easy it is to get an M-rated game as a kid? Most parents don't give a shit about age ratings, and the smart parents can still let their kids play M-rated games while also teaching them the difference between reality and video games. Again, they're doing the absolute bare minimum changes in order to get the game published. Does turning the female gadabout's pantyhose to pure black and covering her chest more magically makes things less offensive? Does removing the whiskey label on her bottle suddenly mean that there's no whiskey in the bottle? It's Square Enix that ultimately approves, so that means even the higher-ups don't believe in the censorship. Speaking of higher-ups not believing in something, it's time for the Type A and Type B conversation. I do not support this in any way. Unfortunately, to talk about this means you have to dip your toe into the whole transgender topic, which is something I haven't done and so desperately don't want to do, but here we go. Humanity is comprised of two genders, male and female. This is an undeniable truth. My personal belief is that every person should be allowed to live their life however they want as long as it doesn't affect your fellow person. That means if someone born a man wants to be a woman, it's their right to live that way as long as it doesn't affect others. That includes not shoving their beliefs onto others, pretty much the same way we all treat religion. You see how easy it is to both believe in science and respect the happiness of others? Now, I know what you're thinking. What about non-binary? Well, that's stupid. You're something. You can't be nothing. If one day you want to be a girl and the next a boy, then just do that. Pick something because you're ruining language as a whole. Now, that's not to say I hate those who call themselves non-binary. I respect them as a human being. I just think they're dumb. There's plenty of things in life that's not black and white, not love and hate. If someone genuinely has the mentality of, if you're not with me, then you're against me, then that's not the type of people you want to be around. Your feelings and opinions are valid, even if the loud minority is calling you a Nazi and trying to cancel you. Which I get the feeling I'll catch some flack for saying any of this, no matter how many times I say I don't hate any group of people, no matter what they decide to call themselves. That's my piece. Now we're back to Type A, Type B. Fuck off with this virtue signaling nonsense. The devs themselves don't believe in this. I don't blame the developers. I blame Square Enix. In the Japanese version of the remake, it's simply male and female. Everywhere else, it's appearance A and appearance B specifically, except it's implemented in the laziest way possible. If you choose appearance A, you're forced into the clearly male version of Erdrick, and appearance B forces you into the clearly female version. They double down on this by specifically telling you would play as a hero with appearance A and a heroine with appearance B, using gender-specific terms for hero. I thought the whole point of Type A and Type B was that genders don't exist. Well, clearly even Square Enix doesn't believe in that nonsense. So bravo, Square, for virtue signaling and immediately being caught in the lie. Just don't do it. Easy. I promise it won't affect sales. Hire me as a consultant. Now that we've covered gender, let's cover racism. The good old classic troll was censored. His lips were changed to match his skin color instead of being a standout feature like in previous titles. To make the change because of racial insensitivity would imply that Square thinks the troll could be interpreted as some sort of caricature of, let's be honest, people of African descent. When I see troll, I think, hell yeah, it's a troll, not, black guy. It's just so fucking stupid to begin with. I mean, let's look at Mr. Popo from Dragon Ball. He's had his share of racial allegations thrown at him, but even as recent as Dragon Ball Daima, his appearance is still the classic pure black skin, big red lips, and Middle Eastern outfit. Mr. Popo was never a racist caricature of anything, but his overall appearance could be inspired by a number of cultures from around the world. Racism is a product of bad faith and ignorance. Some people pull the racism card when they don't understand cultures. Others because they have some weird superiority and think they have to protect people they seem to subconsciously think are lesser than themselves, and other people are just retarded and seek out things to be angry about. In any case, this was a stupid decision and I don't agree with the change. It's now time to talk about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Oh yeah, the whole trifecta of gender, race, and religion. There was a lot of outrage about the removal of the Christian cross when comparing artwork between the original Dragon Quest III and the remake. I could immediately tell that it was coming entirely from those that don't play Dragon Quest. The Christian cross and really anything directly associated to Christianity has been gone since the first game. The West never saw this because back in the day, Nintendo specifically required all references to real-life religions to be removed from games when localizing. Apologies if any info I give is incorrect. It's extremely difficult to find information on this topic, especially now since every search result nets you a never-ending list of articles and posts talking about the censorship in this remake. Most of my information either comes from thecuttingroomfloor.net or personal experience. As far as I could find, there wasn't much of anything in terms of religion in the first Dragon Quest except text at the end of the game that says, "May God always be with you," in Japan changed to, "May the light shine upon thee," in the West. Dragon Quest II had a lot of Christian crosses all over the place, either removed or replaced with a star. Churches were called House of Healing, dead party members were now ghosts instead of in coffins that had a cross on them, priests had their sprite changed entirely, and High Priest Hargon was simply referred to as a wizard sorcerer. Dragon Quest III had a lot of similar changes with the addition of the following. The class Priest was changed to Pilgrim, old men had their walking stick redesigned, and crosses in graveyards were changed to tombstones. This isn't a complete list, just obvious changes I could find across the first 3 titles. I'm sure there's a lot more. Now, I personally don't care about these changes to a certain degree, but I want to make it clear that if you're genuinely bothered by the censorship, then that's completely valid. The reason I don't care is because I think Christianity in Dragon Quest is kind of dumb, and I mean specifically the representation of the real-life religion, Christianity. I actually really love that Dragon Quest is heavy on religion, with priests, churches, religious statues, angels, demons, the almighty, the religious iconography. I love that, and I love that it's more something that is heavily inspired by Christianity and faith in general, rather than just straight up being Christianity itself. It turned into more of a fantasy religion that I believe fits significantly better in Dragon Quest. The Trident Cross is a fine symbol that mixes fantasy with the inspiration and implications of the Christian cross and clearly represents religion. My personal favorite is the Mercedes-Benz logo with the incomplete circle. That feels significantly more fantasy than the Trident Cross. I'm not a fan of the religious censorship changes to the NES version of these games because most of the time the changes look outright terrible, such as the party member priest sprite in Dragon Quest III. That being said, when the changes started to be more of the Dragon Quest we know today, that's where I no longer considered it to be censorship. To bring it back around, those who complained about the religious changes in regards to Dragon Quest III Remake very clearly do not play Dragon Quest at all. The Trident Cross can be seen as early as the original Japanese release of Dragon Quest VIII on the PS2 way back in 2004, meaning it's a change we've had for over 20 years now. Let that settle in, and I hope I've opened your eyes to the fact that the internet is filled with grifters and rage-baiting dumbasses. Don't take the first video you watch, the first headline you see, or the first comment that pops up as the complete truth. Even if I'm the first take you hear on any particular topic, listen to other perspectives, do your own research, have your own thoughts. Okay, now that I've lost the non-existent audience, I can finally go back to talking about the game. Let's continue from the very end. Zoma. I love Zoma. He's the OG rug pull, and this new version is the first time I felt like he was just genuine evil incarnate. Something I absolutely did not feel when I originally played the Switch version. Let me paint a picture real quick. I knew of Zoma before playing Dragon Quest III, so unfortunately he wasn't a surprise for me. Again, the first time I played the game was the original Switch version. The Zoma reveal in that version was lackluster. The screen darkens a little, the guards start blinking out of existence, and random text appears on screen. This is actually very similar to the original 1988 NES version. To clarify, and to my understanding, the Switch version is based on the 2014 mobile version, which I have just learned was based on an older 2009 mobile version, which used to look more like the 1996 SNES version, which for whatever reason was changed to the vomit-inducing 2014 mobile version, which is what continued into the 2019 Switch version. The SNES remake takes it so much further and shows the guards being zapped to death and an ethereal Zoma appearing. As a matter of fact, I was shocked to see just how similar the SNES and HD-2D remake are with this cutscene. Obviously, the new remake looks significantly better, there's no denying that. I really appreciate that they gave Zoma more of an identity with the fact that he has an affinity for ice magic. An icy mist fills the room and quickly starts frosting everything up, and instead of zapping the guards, they're viciously crushed, skewered, and obliterated in a flash freeze. That shit was cold and cool as fuck. Coming from the horrendous OG Switch version, never seeing any other version of this cutscene, and seeing this new one, I was genuinely stunned for a moment and trying to remember if any of that happened in the version I previously played. Once again, voice acting also elevates this cutscene. Zoma sounds great, but the king in particular was the secret star of the show. He sounded so fucking defeated right when he thought they finally reached an era of peace. It was all taken in a second. My men just died. The real big bad has returned. I can't let my people know of Zoma and live in unending fear. But I have absolutely no clue what to do. I'm sorry for my weakness. Just please give me some space. That hit hard, man. If for whatever reason you go to Patty after this, not that you have any reason to, but she reveals that she's always known of Zoma. The king helped create Patty's party planning place because he felt so much guilt that he sent Ortega out without any help. Honestly, this game gets me emotional at times. It's genuinely beautiful how much love this version got and how even an NPC king suddenly has so much more to him. Everything to do with Ortega is soul-crushing. His entire adventure, literally everyone you meet loves him, and when you finally catch up to him in Zoma's castle, it's to watch him die. To see him lose his sight and not even realize he's dying in his son's arm, gripping his hand in his final moments. To hear him talk about how much guilt and regret he has for leaving his family and say how he's a failure as a father and an adventurer, and what he would give just to hold his son's hand one last time. Dying with the thought of how much the son he feels he abandoned must hate him. When you try to tell him it's you, he says he can't hear anything anymore. I'm not entirely sure about this next part, as I've always had this trigger, but from what I could find, if you specifically have the Auroral Helm, which is the upgraded version of Ortega's helmet, Ortega will reach out and recognize it as his own. He ends up telling you that based on the scratches on the helmet, that it's clear your journey hasn't been easy, but you triumph through adversity and knows you'll succeed where he failed. Goddess Speed, my child. In all honesty, despite Ortega saying that, I don't think he recognized you as his actual child. Erdrick is 16 at this moment. He doesn't have the build of a grown man, so Ortega could probably tell that he was being held by someone significantly younger than him. My child, my son, my boy, all common things for an older man to call a kid. This makes his final line hurt so much more. Getting back to Zoma, the bridge leading up to him was incredible, visually speaking at least. Oh yeah, I loved fighting 20 different versions of Baramos, real cool. Anyways, the Zoma fight is awesome. The music is incredible. When I fought him during the second playthrough, I completely forgot to equip the Sphere of Light. Fortunately, after a few turns, the game will say, hey, the Sphere of Light is shining, want to use it? And then the fight proceeds as normal, which I don't recall that ever happening when I played the Switch mobile version. After defeating Zoma, the entrance to the underworld is sealed. You're stuck in Alefgard, or I guess the whole of the underworld is known as Torland. Your mother all alone in the overworld, or, heavily implied to be Erdria, but they literally never say the name in game. I believe most people who played DQ3 went directly to Tantagel to finish up the game. But it wasn't until the second playthrough that I decided to actually go and see what the people of Alefgard had to say. So let's run through what I could find and order it from least to most interesting. The horses in Demdara seem to be happy too, since the game straight up tells you that they're grateful. The fairy at the entrance of the Shrine of Spirit, who asks you to save Ortega, confirms it was you who defeated Zoma and asks where Ortega is. Realizing what happened, she begins to cry. The priest in Sanctum says, I know you're tired, but you gotta continue your lineage. A hooded old man in Tantagel Castle says something similar. The weapon shopkeep in Demdara has finally decided on a name for his newborn and decided to name him Magog. Talking to his wife, she's not a particular fan. Magog is technically important in Dragon Quest I. The miners in Quagmire Cave react positive to the news that Zoma is defeated and now mine faster in hopes to reach Sunlight and Rimuldar sooner. Robin Hood's bandits are excited to be given the day off since Zoma is defeated, but have no clue who did it. In general, most people are aware you were the one who saved the world, and that honestly was an extremely welcome surprise. Robin Hood himself, locked up in a cell in Tantagel, is shocked to find out you defeated Zoma and says no wonder he got his ass handed to him every time by you, and that we showed him the error of his ways and he'll never do anything bad again. In Tantagel Castle, there's a Chancellor-type character that is shocked to hear you say that you want to entrust the Sunstone to him for safekeeping. He humbly accepts and says his profession prophetic dream was true. The Sunstone is actually removed from your inventory. This surprised me a lot, and I found it really cool that you could do this before the final cutscene implies that you do it. In Cantlin, Galen says he'll return to his parents and compose a song about our heroic deeds. His parents are grateful to you to hear the news that their son will return. Obviously, his home eventually becomes the town of Galenholm. Back at the Shrine of Spirit, the servant of Rubus, the voice throughout the game, thanks you and says that Rubus looks forward to meeting you again someday. Funny enough, when you go to the Tower of Rubus, it's blocked by an old guy and a buff guy. Both are grateful, and the old guy says you'll be celebrated for aeons, and no one is more delighted than Rubus herself. Except, you know, she doesn't want to fucking talk to you apparently, so okay, I guess. There's a kid in Tantagel that says he's studying to free people from curses in the same way we freed the world from evil. He says that if we ever need a curse removed, to just visit him someday. This one was extremely interesting to me, and I guess now that I think about it, so is the whole Magog thing too. This kid is the same old man in Dragon Quest I doing exactly what he says he's going to do. By the time the events of Dragon Quest I occur, Magog is presumably dead. He was a blacksmith who hid Erdrick's armor when Demdara was destroyed by the Dragon Lord's minions. I was always under the impression, and honestly Dragon Quest I almost implies it too, that Erdrick was basically an old legend at this point and that you're his descendant. Based on the information we're given, it could have been hundreds of years ago when Erdrick was still alive. In reality, the hero of Dragon Quest I is either Erdrick's grandson or, at most, his great-grandson, simply based on the fact that the kid from 3 is still alive and that Magog probably died not that long ago. I just found that to be completely mind-blowing. Okay, the most interesting thing I found. If you go back to the scholar in Cantlin where you find the Broken Sword of Kings, standing in his room is a completed golem. Yes, the very same golem you fight in Dragon Quest I in order to get into Cantlin itself. It's right there! The scholar says that he intended to create the golem to protect Cantlin, but since Zoma is defeated, that there really is no point anymore. And he continues to say that it's a shame the name Golem that he came up with will go unused. God damn, I love this game. I really, truly do. I know a lot, or possibly even all of this, has been in previous versions to some degree, but it's just so much fun to be so into something that you try different things and you end up discovering whole new things that completely reshape your understanding of the story. Anyways, the ending is pretty standard. One interesting thing to note is when the king gives you the title of Erdrick, he says that it means dwelling land in ancient tongue. In Dragon Quest XI, the Yggdragon also gives you the title of Erdrick, but the way she dramatically says it could either mean that Erdrick means mightiest of heroes, or that she was simply calling you the mightiest of heroes after bestowing the title unto you. Kind of confusing, but overall pretty interesting. Then comes the post-credit scene. It's been theorized for a long time that the egg of the Dragon Queen is actually the Dragon Lord, and the scene of the High Priest revealing himself to be Hargon from Dragon Quest II pretty much confirms that. I really love that. The more they expand on these original stories and tie them together even more is genuinely my favorite parts of this remake. Let's quickly touch on the post-game. Overall, I really like it, but honestly, probably only because of Draki mode. Draki mode is baby mode and makes it impossible for you to die. The contents of the post-game is really interesting, but before you actually start it, make sure to abandon Erdrick at Patty's party planning place, cause he's literally your worst party member. Yeah, no joke. He can't class change, meaning he doesn't have access to Monster Wrangler or Sage. So for that reason alone, he's significantly limited. Anyways, let's run through the post game. You get to go to heaven, run through a long dungeon that throws a bunch of different rooms from previous dungeons together. You eventually end up in a place called Cloud's Gate Citadel, which I'll touch on later. You run through a second dungeon all the way to the tippy top where you fight a magical wish-granting dragon named Shenlong. That sounds familiar. You can wish for a bunch of stuff like bringing Ortega back to life, getting a porn magazine, a new monster arena, being able to dye Erdrick's hair, obtaining Rubus' sword, a different porn magazine, and unlocking the true final dungeon. Running through the true final dungeon, called the Temple of Trials, leads to the true post-game super boss, named Grand Dragon, who gives you a medal if you beat him in so many turns. And that medal does literally nothing. Alright, cool, I guess. That's the entirety of the post-game. It's genuinely fun until it's not. The moment it stops being fun is when you become sick of the outrageous encounter rates, or when you become sick of every monster almost killing you in one hit and you have to spend so many turns setting up or healing, or when they straight up just kill you in one hit. It becomes an extreme slog when you try to go through all that. It becomes an extreme slog when you try to grind out levels or classes to finally be able to handle further areas. It becomes an extreme slog if you can't beat Shenlong or the Grand Dragon. If you're an Omega autist and love min-maxing, then boy howdy, this is the dream for you. Unfortunately, most people don't want to dedicate that much time to see content that might or might not even be worth it at the end. And honestly, all I'd recommend is beating Shenlong once, wishing Ortega back to life, and watching that reunion cutscene. All possible to do without Draki mode. It's everything after that's pretty much not worth going through the trouble of doing legit. Again, I had a lot of fun until I didn't. Then I turned on Draki mode, then it became fun again. The reunion cutscene alone is worth the trouble to get. Alright, on to the part I'm most excited to talk about: references, Easter eggs, and theory crafting. The last Dragon Quest game I played before this remake came out was 11. 11 is an anniversary title with so many references to other titles in the series. Because of this, I figured things like Erdwin, his party, the Sword of Light, and a number of other things were all just fun references to 3 and nothing more. When that final scene of Erdrick's mother closing the book on 11's story began, it all finally clicked. So with this playthrough of HD-2D Remake, I was keeping an eye out for some 11 specific references, or more specifically, retcons. This time around, 3 seems to pick up right where 11 left off, again with Erdrick's mother closing the red book, which represents 11's whole story, and placing it next to the green book, which is supposed to represent Erdwin's whole story from 11 as well. And next to the bookcase is a painting of Yggdrasil. As far as I can tell, there really isn't anything else until you meet the Dragon Queen, who originally had a really dopey purple sprite, then multiple versions of a dopey green sprite. Now she has a gorgeous giant sprite that is very reminiscent of the Egg Dragon at the end of 11. On top of this, one of the priests mentions that the Dragon Queen has gone through cycles of rebirth, meaning that the Dragon Queen is in fact a reincarnation of the Egg Dragon. Egg Dragon states that even she may succumb to the night, implying that she could take on an evil form and that a hero would have to take up the Sword of Light to save the world. Thanks to the Hargon reveal, we know the Dragon Lord is the Dragon Queen's child, and that the Egg Dragon's prediction of potentially taking on an evil form would come true. Now, this part is just extremely confusing, especially since the name of the sword is just one goddamn mess, so bear with me. In Dragon Quest XI, you can get a sword called the Sword of Kings, which is eventually used as material for the Supreme Sword of Light, which is not the original Sword of Light and looks slightly different. Long story short, you end up with the Super Sword of Light, which is the original Sword of Light and has nothing to do with the Sword of Kings. This Super Sword of Light is left inside Yggdrasil at the end of the game. Specific to the HD-2D remake, you can actually find the Super Sword of Light in Cantlin in the possession of a scholar, except now it's called Broken Sword because Zoma broke it before your adventure begins. This broken sword looks exactly like the Super Sword of Light. How it ended up in Cantlin, which is the underworld, from Yggdrasil, which was originally in the overworld but does not exist at the time Dragon Quest III's events occur, is a complete mystery. The scholar tells you that the only thing known about the broken sword is that it was made a long time ago, which makes sense because Erdwin was the original forger of the blade, and that took place ages before the Luminary's adventure in 11. Now, when you finally repair the broken blade, it retains the exact appearance of the Super Sword of Light, except now, for whatever reason, it's called the Sword of Kings. After the events of Dragon Quest III, the Sword of Kings will go on to be called Erdrick's Sword. Oh my God. So one short vague conversation and a consistency in design is the only thing connecting the sword across the games. That's all the new retcons I could find, and even trying to do research online, it really seems like the book and the painting of Yggdrasil at the start of the game, the Dragon Queen, and the Sword of Light are the only connections to 11, which is insane. In Dragon Quest XI, the devs bothered to give the world a name, Erdrea. Dragon Quest III's world never had a name name aside from generally being called Overworld. So you'd think that there could be a one-off line of someone saying the name Erdrea, but there isn't! Okay, fine, I guess. One could make the argument that the time gap between 3 and 11 is so large. The fact that Erdric's mother is reading 11's story from a book could be seen that 11, as well as Erdogan's adventure, is almost seen as a myth, legend, fable, take your pick. This upsets me to no end, probably because we as the player know it's all connected, but there are enough mysteries there that it could all be argued that it isn't connected, which leads to my next topic. How does this Erdrick quadrilogy, or whatever the correct term might be, connect to seemingly unrelated Dragon Quest titles? Oh boy, it gets fun from here. Zenithium. Ortega is originally told that his helmet can be repaired using Zenithium, but that it no longer exists in this world. Now, before continuing on with this, I do want to remind you that you can find Zenithium and that it's used to upgrade Ortega's helm to the Auroral Helm. Funny enough, the Auroral Helm makes its first appearance under that name in this remake. We've seen illustrations dating all the way back to 1987, and that's because the Auroral Helm is the true name of Erdrick's helm, finally confirming that Ortega's helm was the original version. Now, I know there are people out there who will mention that in the Japanese version of the game, Zenithium is simply called blue metal, or something along those lines. Personally, I don't think these localizers would ever throw out a term as extremely important as Zenithium just for fun. Everything is done with intention. Let me read this piece of trivia from a Dragon Quest wiki for a moment. The first appearance of Zenithium was in the 1989 item storybook, a picture book that explained the origins of several popular items in the series' early days. Zenithium is mentioned in the first story, where it is described as a divine mineral found only in the realm of the gods and has the miraculous property of healing the wounds of anyone who stays in contact with a piece. It is revealed that the auroral armor was forged from Zenithium, explaining how it heals the wearer with every step. Zenithium as a concept is almost as old as the franchise itself, but just like the Auroral Helm, wouldn't be seen until fairly recently. Zenithium shows up in Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2, both of which are not canon, but it's the fact that both of these games are based off of the world in the Erdrick quadrilogy that's important here. Zenithium manages to recently show up in 3 Erdrick related titles, one of which is now canon, that being the HD-2D remake. Once again, it being called Zenithium in the West is not an accident or a fun reference they decided to throw in. At this point, I figured that the Zenithian trilogy takes place entirely before Dragon Quest III, but after 11, since there's no references in 11 outside of music as far as I remember. My reason being that, again, Zenithium is thought to no longer exist by the time the events of Dragon Quest III occurs. Let's dive even deeper. Now we're heading into territory I'm a little unfamiliar with since I've played very little of Dragon Quest VI specifically, but I did spoil myself a little bit because my curiosity got the best of me. First off, I mentioned earlier that you go to heaven in the post-game and that you eventually reach a place called Cloud's Gate Citadel. Heaven is often referred to in the Zenithian trilogy, and it's where Zenithia itself resides, although at the time of Dragon Quest VI, it's referred to as Cloud's Gate Citadel. Now, Cloud's Gate Citadel was in the 1996 Super Famicom remake of Dragon Quest III in the post-game, but this was released a year after the 1995 release of Dragon Quest VI, so the Citadel itself could have easily just been seen as a fun Easter egg. With Zenithium now being in the HD-2D remake, I no longer think this is a simple Easter egg. In the Super Famicom remake of 3, you can find a king by the name of King Zenith. In the HD-2D remake, he calls himself Lord Zenith and specifically mentioned that he's the first of his name. As far as I can tell, we don't know the lifespan of Zenithians. I originally thought, since Zenithium is thought to no longer exist, that the entirety of the Zenithian trilogy must take place before 3. But if Lord Zenith is the first of his name, then there's a chance that Zenithians have extremely long lifespans and perhaps nearly depleted the Zenithium ore. The only way things line up correctly is if Dragon Quest VI takes place after Dragon Quest II. With Rubus herself showing up in Dragon Quest VI, this leads me to believe that the underworld in Dragon Quest III, also also known as Torland, is the dream world in Dragon Quest VI that is destroyed at the end of the game. That's my understanding of what I've read. God damn, I'm playing Dragon Quest VI as soon as I finish this video. Alright, so if 6 takes place after 2 and the dream world, or Torland, is destroyed at the end of the game, then that must mean that Dragon Quest 4 and 5 take place in Erdrea again, or whatever the world is called during that era. We already know 8 is loosely related to the Erdrick quadrilogy, because Ramia straight up says she dimension hopped to 8's world. And finally, you have to wonder if the Celestrians from 9 are distant relatives to the Zenithians. Oh my god, my brain is just about melted right now. But I love this. I love this so much. I love Dragon Quest so much. Okay, let's rapid fire some points I had difficulty fitting in elsewhere. Maw of the Necrogon sucks so fucking hard. Characters are not battle animated. That sucks. Characters on the very left, typically the hero, is constantly covered by menus, which is stupid because of how much empty screen there is during the menu selection portion of the battle. I so desperately wanted to name my thief Patches, but the male thief looks so goddamn awful, and I didn't want to use the name Patches on a female character. This is how I came to the realization in games that let you create your own party, I somehow always end up with a harem. I will now embrace my destiny. And, oh, I guess that was it. That's all I wrote. All right, interesting point to end off on. Oh, that's right, I almost forgot. Remember how I said you can switch out Erdrick after you've beaten the game? Well, with Ortega wished back to life, I felt it appropriate to leave Erdrick at home to live his life with his family. It's up to the party members to defeat Zoma and save both worlds. Considering you're way overpowered now, Zoma dies in a few turns, you head back to the King of Tantagel, and the king is confused that the hero of the party isn't around, and... Wait, oh,
the one
fuck!
You seek stands before you.
What?
Oh my, how? No matter. It is good that thou hast come before us. We must give thanks for thine efforts on our part, and thy truly heroic deeds.
That fucking bitch Rubus pulls Erdrick from the completely closed off overworld and dumps him in front of the king. There you have it, folks. Rubus is the true villain of Dragon Quest. Wow, I've finally reached the end. I'm really happy with how the Dragon Quest III series has turned out. You can't even imagine the amount of closure I've gotten from finally finishing these two ginormous projects, the other being Monster Hunter Stories. They've been haunting me for so long, and I feel like I can start a new chapter now, which by the time this video releases, I would have been streaming fairly regularly and releasing content at a much faster rate than I ever have before. I'm happy with my videos I've created before. I'm happy with how my videos have evolved in the past 2+ years that I've been making them. I'm happy with what I'm making now. I'm happy with my growth as a content creator and entertainer. I'm happy to be able to connect with an audience and share my experiences with everyone. I love Dragon Quest III HD-2D Remake. I love Dragon Quest. I love video games. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing or becoming a member of the channel, and follow me on Twitch for more of my shenanigans. Most importantly, hit up the Discord where you can keep up with all my projects, uploads, and live streams. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching.